So you might wonder then, here we are looking at this big abstract question. How did the universe come into being? And as we look at that, we might think, with everything else that we have to think about, why something like that? Why are we in such a big remote issue, it would seem like? Well, besides the fact that it's where we are in our Truth Project, which, by the way, the video sessions are the best I think I've heard on this topic over the next 2 weeks. And we are going to divide this question into 2 weeks. It's the heavens and life. But why bother with it? I want to give you a little thought to consider here, is that how we see everything coming into existence affects the way we see what we are. And how we see what we are affects who we think we are. And this trickles down into every area of life. If the universe was a big accident, and you're an accident as far as a living creature because you're an accident on top of the accident, and that morality is nothing more than kind of an evolved process that happened over time by random accident as well. If that's what we are, that's going to affect every area of our life. It's why it's okay when you get mad that you can set up an ambush and shoot a bunch of police officers. It's why you can take it out on the rest of the world with a hunting rifle in the middle of the highway. It's why marriages would fail. It's why get married at all. It's why our kids end up into all kinds of at-risk behavior. It's why abortion's okay. It's why we do a lot of things when depending how we think about who and what we are. And it trickles down into every area of our life. How we see the universe directly, maybe not so much, but it's at the basis of it all. And that's why we're going to do that. We're going to spend a few weeks looking at the heavens, how did it all happen? And life, how did it all happen? Why is it even here? But let's start with the heavens, with the universe itself. How did it come into being? Only 2 options. There's only 2. Either it was always here, or it was created. It's an eternal thing, or somewhere it had a birthday. Somewhere along the line there was a birthday. The thing is that if we look at either option and take God out of the equation, neither one makes sense. Both of them run into some serious difficulty. Start with the first one, the universe is eternal. There's been a number of theories that way. The expansion-contraction theory was one. There's a few others out there. The whole idea that the universe always was here. If you watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos series way back in the 70s, we could date ourselves. Who saw that series? Oh, yeah, me. Yeah, I was old enough to understand. But he started out, the universe always was. That's all there is. And a lot of people, and it set up a whole line of thinking. The problem with it is we take God out of the equation. There's a little thing called in the branch of physics called thermodynamics. Sound familiar? The laws of thermodynamics. The third law is the law of entropy. Basically this: everything winds down. Matter moves from a state of being formed into chaos. It moves towards chaos. Energy moves from a higher to a lower state. You want to prove the experiment to yourself, just don't do any house cleaning for a month. Call it a scientific experiment. see if your house doesn't move into chaos. Things moving to chaos. Then we run into a problem. If the universe is eternal past, why is it still here? Why hasn't everything simply ended up dead? It's all supposed to wind down, but it's not. So we run into a certain problem there. Well, then, okay, the universe was created. How about that? Well, here's the thing. How did we end up with nothing to everything? See, the first law of thermodynamics is that energy can neither be created or destroyed. So as we looked at it, you probably gathered a little bit from the video that went by. It wasn't just that something came into being, it's that there was nothing, and then there was everything. All the matter, all the energy, everything that would set up the universe was all there. All the laws of physics, poof, instantly, it was all there. Nothing, poof, everything. How does that happen? How does that happen? Wow. Well, I guess if we were taking God out of the equation, maybe we'd say, well, given enough time, anything is possible. Anything is probable, really. When has nothing ever produced everything? It's a giant leap of faith, isn't it? So even if we were to accept that, we'd have to do it in a giant leap of faith. Problem is, if we're looking at scientific method, what is science? Science is the empirical observation of things and then coming to a conclusion from that. It's very objective, very quantifiable. But so how can we say that, well, we'll just take it on faith? We're setting up a theory that violates the very method on which we're using. So we run into some serious problems of everything, nothing at all, then all of a sudden everything is there. Everything is a big, big place. You know, it might have been even easier to accept that a little bit in times past. You know, for most of humanity's time, we thought there was 1,000 stars in the sky. Up and through the 1200s, the last count was around 1,000 stars. There's a few more we found since then in this thing called everything, this place, the universe where everything is. Just to give you an example, let's see if I'm going to get Ron to shoot us into outer space here. And if you, let's have a contest. When you can figure out what this is, just shout it out. I don't hear any shouting. I guess we've got the Milky Way. Okay, there we go. Josh is the scholar of the day. So whenever I say scholar, I'm talking about Josh over there. It is the Milky Way. One galaxy, our galaxy, mid-sized galaxy, 100,000 stars. 100 million, 100 million, which basically means not every star has a solar system, but for sake of argument, 100 million solar systems, just like ours out there, floating around. It's so big that if we could travel at the speed of light, I could put you on the spot, Josh, and say, as the scholar, what's the speed of light? But you'd probably be like me, I'm not really sure. It's very fast. 186,000 miles per second. If we could travel at the speed of light, and we crossed the galaxy in our souped-up spaceship, traveling at the speed of light, it would still take us 100,000 years to cross just this one galaxy. Now, imagine this. If we took everybody on Earth and we divided up the universe among us, and everybody got their piece, their turf. With the number of people on the Earth today, each of us would have 12 billion galaxies to call our own. Boy, talk about real estate taking a jump, huh? 12 billion galaxies. Everything is a big, big place. There is a lot of stuff in this everything. And we look at this coming out of nothing. Wow, it is quite a leap of faith to say, it was just happenstance. It just happened. No, that's not going to work too well for us, is it? It violates our own method of scientific thinking. We had the dawn of the radio telescope, which really started to change everything in the middle of the last century. And as we started counting more than 1,000 stars, and we were looking at the universe and we were able to peer a little deeper into things, of course the question came up, how did it come into being? How did it all start? And we ended up with a feud, if you would say, that started between two men. One of them you probably recognize the name, Edwin Hubble. Of course, we've got a big old telescope named after him, don't we? The other man's name was Sir Frederick Hoyle. And the two theories were Mr. or Dr. Hoyle's theory on steady-state universe, which basically meant there was matter that was coming into existence somewhere all the time, and the universe was kept in a steady state, as opposed to Edwin Hubble, who thought it all came into existence at once. In one great big epic event, the universe came into existence. Interestingly enough, it was Hoyle who ended up coining the phrase we know for Hubble's theory. And it is, of course, the Big Bang. The Big Bang theory. And Hoyle had a real problem with that theory for one reason. If everything came into existence whoosh, in that way, what does that kind of sound like? Kind of sounds like the first chapter of Genesis, doesn't it? And Hoyle was an adamant, ardent atheist. So anything that would even point in the direction of God gave him real trouble. So even as evidence mounted up against his theory, he couldn't accept the other theory, basically because there just might be a creator involved in that, and he couldn't accept that. Chuck Colson wrote a little article on the history of this, and he put things quite well. So I'm just going to read a little piece of his article to explain what went on here. The Big Bang and Hoyle's steady state were mere abstractions unable to be tested. Then in 1964, doctors Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson of Bell Labs encountered continuous static on certain microwave frequencies. Rotating their antenna in a vain attempt to remove the noise, they realized it was coming from all directions, permeating the universe. Physics had hailed this as the first observation in evidence of the Big Bang, known as cosmic background radiation, or the radio echo of creation. The radio echo of creation, which they would expect to hear if the universe started in one big jump. Penzias said the philosophical significance in his discovery was this: the best data we have, he said, are exactly what I would have predicted had I had nothing to go by but the 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, the Bible as a whole. Exactly what I would have predicted had I had nothing but the Bible to go by. Now, whether we think of, some people will hold to the idea of the universe created in a literal day, okay, or created in this Big Bang way, which took a little bit longer, okay, not even arguing the point, just simply this: either way, everything came into being from nothing and instantly had an order of physics, an order of the universe come into effect. Everything implies an intelligent designer. It all works in systems. Here's a first takeaway in dealing with this morning, is that as a Christian, we don't have to be afraid to peer into a telescope. We don't have to be afraid of science as, ooh, there's something else to threaten our beliefs. Because in fact, if we look with an open mind, a lot of what is being discovered actually points to someone created this all. Someone created this all. Dr. Panzas mentioned the Bible, so let's go there just for as a segue into to what the Bible has to say about this. Psalms 19:1. This is a verse or a couple of verses that anyone who reads Scripture much will probably recognize these verses. Psalms 19:1 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day upon day utters speech, and night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard." Just look at all the verbs in there. Here is heaven. It's all about the glory of God. It's declaring, it's showing, it's uttering, it's revealing. Well, what was David really talking about? David's writing a hymn here just to make sure. Go back to his original language. The heavens declare the glory. Essentially, in the Hebrew, the word does mean, in fact, universe. So we are talking about everything there is. The declaring, showing, uttering, revealing. Showing is an interesting word in the Hebrew. It means to record, to recount, or celebrate. I want you to kind of hold these definitions, if you will, a little bit in your memory banks. Showing meant to record, recount, or celebrate. Declaring means to manifest, to announce by mouth, to explain, to praise. That's what is being done. Now, we move ahead several thousand years. Now we're in the time of the New Testament. That was David. Now Paul's talking, he's explaining the same thing to the church in Rome. So in Romans 1:18, he says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and righteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen." Manifest and clearly seen. In the Greek, now we've moved into another language, but in the Greek, literally, it's interesting, it kind of means basically to shine out publicly. To shine out publicly. In other words, you get something you want people to know, it's everywhere. You've got it on Twitter. You've got it on your Facebook. You've got it in the news. It's everywhere. And that's what it means to manifest and clearly see. And this idea fits in with the other. Here's where we are. Here's where I'm taking us. We've looked at science to an extent to explain some background stuff there. We've looked at what was said in the Bible. Now, Psalms 19 is something we can understand in this generation that no other generation before us could. There is a way we can understand it that no other generation before us could. When we think of Psalm 19, we almost think in a little bit of a figurative sense. The heavens declares glory. What is it really saying? Well, there are the stars. Use your brain. There's the evidence. And by inferring from the evidence, there's a creator behind it all. But it also talks about uttering and speech, and you can actually hear the evidence of the universe. What if Psalms 19 is literally true? That there is in fact a literal context, that in fact you can turn your antenna anywhere in space you want, and you will hear what is being uttered, what is being revealed of the glory of God. That sound you heard in the beginning, in our little opening video, electromagnetic particles known as the echo of creation, solar winds. We didn't know they were there for a long time. Then an interesting thing happened when Voyager went by Jupiter. That solar wind, that echo of creation, began to play off of the poles of Jupiter. And in that playing off, it was kind of like a speaker. Kind of like the music was always there, but now here's the speaker. And when it played off of the poles, the electromagnetic interaction with the poles of Jupiter, it actually resonated in a sound right in the middle of human hearing. As a matter of fact, so well that everybody's seen a little bit of brain science. You've got your alpha patterns and your theta patterns and all this stuff, and they know when you're sleeping, they know when you're awake, so be good for goodness sake. I'm sorry, I just broke into another song there. But in all of this, the sound that interacts from the echo of creation fits in the alpha brainwave area of the human brain. So if you were to sit and listen to that for any length of time, it has kind of this meditative, hypnotic effect because of the way it plays. Here's what I want us to catch on this, get your mind around this fact, is that it's tonal. So technically it's music. You can think of it as music. It's a tonal thing. All those stars, now how many stars do we think are in the universe? We thought 1,000 for quite a while. Now we're up to 70 sextillion. And if you're wondering how big that number is, that's 70 followed by 21 zeros. The universe has a lot of stars, and they're all singing in unison of the creation of the universe. It's the oldest hymn in existence. So old, not even written by man, it's been written by God himself. It's the echo of creation that we didn't even know was there until this generation. Cosmic music, singing his praise, recounting. It is a record of what happened. All those things we saw in Psalm 19. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that we are without excuse. We are without excuse. All that there is, down to the universe itself, literally singing a song of creation. And we can hear it. It's now possible for us to hear it. It wasn't before, but it is in our generation. It is in ours. Here's the question I have as we look at this, as we open our minds. There are those that, despite everything else, will deny the evidence. But as we look at things like this coming into being, in our generation, then shouldn't we be taking God even more literally than we do? If all of these things, just starting with the whole universe, that's either noise, fine, if you want to take God out of the equation. But even for those who wouldn't believe in God, there's no argument. It is the echo of creation. Shouldn't we be taking God more literally? Now that we know that the universe isn't just 1,000 stars, but 70 sextillion stars, shouldn't we see God as far bigger than any other generation before us, not smaller? More literal, not less literal? Deeper, not less deeper? Shouldn't that be the way that we are affected? Does it? Is that how we see God? As literal as what we can hear with our ears? How clearly do we see the God we're coming to discover more all the time?